no matter what you've done, nothing can separate you from the love of God. Ryan Stevenson's Dove Award-winning breakout hit, The Eye of the Storm, was an overnight success, but his path to success was decades in the making. Ryan always knew he was called to be a musician, but career changes, failed label contracts, insecurities, and his high-stress days working as a paramedic challenged his dream. Ryan describes the many ways his faith was tested and how each trial helped him to become more reliant on Christ. This is his story. This is today's Nashville. This is faith. Ryan, I absolutely love all of your songs. Thank you for inviting me into your home here in Nashville.
You're welcome. Honored to have you.
You know, you have some mega hits out there. Eye of the Storm, No Matter What. You know, God has taken you on an amazing journey. Let's start from the very beginning.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for saying that. My journey has been unbelievable and unconventional. I'm from South Central Oregon, born and raised in a small little farming community of about 250 people. It's called Bonanza, Oregon. I grew up with farmers, grew up in a little small country church, grew up in a great home. And when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, my mother put me in a kids choir at our church. And I didn't want to sing, and I was so mad at her for making me do that. But I feel like that, just her doing that, kind of instilled this love and this small, birth of passion to sing and developing this love for music. And there was always music going on in our house. My mother was always singing. She wasn't a very good piano player, but she tried. When I got into high school, my youth pastor gave me, for a high school graduation present, gave me an acoustic guitar. And it didn't make any sense to me because I'm a drummer. Like, I started playing the drums in the 3rd grade, and so I always wanted to just be a drummer. And so when my youth pastor bought me an acoustic guitar, and he showed up at my house, he's like, I felt like the Lord was just telling me to give this to you, and I want to be obedient to that, so here you go.
Did you even know how to play it?
I didn't, and I didn't sing, I didn't write songs, I didn't play guitar, I was just playing. And if one person in the world knew that I had dreams to be a drummer in a rock band, it would have been my youth leader. But he buys me an acoustic guitar and goes on his way.
Now, did you want to be a rock?
Yeah, that's all I ever wanted to do, is I just wanted to be a drummer in like a Christian band. And so that was my true pursuit, was just really getting good at the drums. And so when he dumps this guitar in my lap, it didn't make any sense at all. But when I went to college, so after I graduated, I go to college my freshman term. All the guys who lived in my hallway in our dorm, they all played guitar. And my next door neighbor was walking down the hallway one day, and he peeks in my room and he sees my guitar sitting there. He's like, hey, is that your guitar? I was like, yeah. He's like, you play? I said, no, I don't. He's like, oh, cool. And he leaves, and then he comes right back with his guitar. He just started showing me where to put my fingers and how to play chords, and it just clicked. Like, it just made sense, and I could just do it. And that right there was really, I think, the starting point of just this, where I've been for the last 20 some odd years. It was really that youth pastor giving me that guitar, my neighbor teaching me to play, and that opened up just such an amazing, unforeseen chapter for me.
What were you going to school for?
I originally went to school for pre-med. I wanted to be an emergency room physician, and I strayed off course, got put on academic probation right when I got to school, almost got kicked out. When I got my act together, I was so far behind in my credits and in my grades that I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in education. And I actually taught school for 2 years right out of college. Eventually went back to school, became a paramedic, and really pursued a lot of the medical world after that.
Now from Oregon, how did you get to Nashville?
We moved from Oregon to Boise, Idaho. My wife and I met in college. She's from Boise. We were living in Oregon. On the day before our 1-year anniversary, we moved over to Idaho to be a little closer to her family. I went back to school, got my paramedic license in the state of Idaho, and I worked as a paramedic for 8 years. And all the while I was working as a paramedic, I was playing acoustic open mic nights in coffee shops around town just as a hobby. And that just I just kept growing and getting better and working on writing songs. And I feel like those years of having a job that allowed me the time to pursue my love for music and still work a full-time job, it was like this perfect scenario, an amazing fit. And so I ended up getting signed to a record deal through a crazy series of events, which ultimately, years later led us out here to Tennessee.
So as you're working on your music, and where was your faith at this time?
I mean, my faith, I've always just had a deep-rooted sense that God is always ever present with me. I gave my heart to Jesus when I was 7. I never doubted that. I knew the love of Jesus. I felt like I just had this sensitive spot spiritually for God and the things of the Lord, and just this desire to walk with Him. So taking music and stories and testimonies and the Bible or my journals, my prayers, everything that you would use to create, I just created in a way that my faith and my love for God and my perspective on life and the way I grew up, the things I'd seen as a paramedic, being with people in their loss and suffering and tragedy, I just found a way, because of, I feel like, my sensitive spirit, my tender heart, I think. I'm a lot like my mom that way. It was easy to write songs about the human condition and talk about our faith in music. It just seemed natural.
We have a lot in common, because I used to be an ER nurse.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of tragedy. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure as an EMT paramedic, you have seen a lot too.
Yes, ma'am.
How have you dealt with that?
I mean, painfully and incrementally, I guess, if I could just sum it up. I think there's just things that you see, like that job woke me up so fast, immediately. It was such a life-changing chapter for me. I got to see firsthand just how precious life is, how fragile we are. There are no guarantees, and truly how I got to see so many people in the process of their suffering still have peace in God. And there's so many things that I could say about my time there. I feel like after all these years since I haven't been on the ambulance, there's that season for me changed my life so drastically that still, all these years later, I feel like it's such a huge part of who I am, and it's easy for me to see people in their current situation. It taught me not to judge people in a real big way.
Well, there was a storm at one point as you were working as a paramedic. Lightning struck, and it changed your life. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about it when we come back.